So again, welcome back to another episode, and happy to be here as one of your hosts. And today I have a guest with me and a colleague, Todd Luger, and we're going to be talking about building bridges between classical Chinese medicine, biofield science, and consciousness. And it just seems that that's where the paradigm shift is going. And Todd has become the co-chair of a collection of presentations and lectures that's available online that we call the Healthy Horizons Symposium. And I wanted him to come on to really talk about this topic, about this building the bridge. So rather than me ramble here, let's bring Todd on, and I'm going to ask him some questions, and we're going to geek out a bit because that's what Todd and I like to do when we meet in person when we get on the phone. Todd, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Lorne.
So, our topic today is building bridges, classical Chinese medicine, biofield sciences, and consciousness. And I'd love to hear your side of the story of what was the original inspiration for you wanting to organize this group of speakers and talks on building, bridging, or not building, but bridging classical Chinese medicine, biofield sciences, and consciousness.
I was working on a project a couple of years ago, and I was doing some research on speakers that I was recruiting for that project. And I stumbled by chance onto just an explosion in research on biofield science that had taken place in the past 20 years and had really escaped my notice because I had been more focused on things like functional medicine and Chinese herbs from a pharmacological perspective. And I had missed out on this really amazing new area of study. And the thing that really excited me when I came across this research on biofield science was that I felt it had significant implications for understanding how Chinese medicine works from a modern scientific perspective.
You know, when I think about this, Todd, and this is what got me interested when we kind of connected on this, is so much we seem to be wanting to fit Chinese medicine into the Western paradigm. And in that talk that you and I were on with Dr. Ed Neal, and he's one of the people that have put the presentation together for this, he said it's actually the other way around. And he's trained as Chinese medicine and he's a medical doctor, a physician. It's the other way around. Western medicine fits into classical Chinese medicine. And so much of the research is on such a material level, trying to understand the mechanism of acupuncture. And part of the stuff that I think when we geeked out is there something else happening that we're not looking at, we're not measuring properly or looking to measure? And I think that was also part of this process, right? Because maybe something's happening on a biofield level. And then what we're seeing is a trickle down effect. We're measuring what's happening in the body when we look at hormones and gene expression. And this was where I think also we got intrigued, right? Is what are we working on? And if we stay on that Newtonian materialistic level, we may miss out on things because that's what we seem to be. I don't know if you're still thinking this, but it seems like we're trying so hard to justify our medicine, validate it through the Western model, but maybe the Western model is incomplete. And it seems like the Western model, going to quantum physics, the new science, seems to be understanding the world from maybe a different perspective, not just the five senses. And to me, it seems like classical Chinese medicine fits more into that model, and it can explain why people benefit from it, even though it's been hard to research from the current Western model. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Lauren. I'll give you an example of one of the lines of research that I thought was incredibly exciting when I became aware of it. There's a researcher at Tufts University named Michael Levin who has doctoral degrees in biology and computer science. And when he in his biological research that he's been doing for the past 20 years, he was really inspired by a pioneer of bioelectrical research from decades ago named Dr. Robert Becker. And Robert Becker, toward the end of his career, also did a lot of research in the area of acupuncture and bioelectricity. But that research kind of fizzled out for a long time. I think it was in part because there was a lot of excitement about the Human Genome Project, and that was finally going to reveal the underlying code of the way everything worked in the body. But a lot of people feel that what happened at the end of the Human Genome Project was they didn't quite get to the finish line, and there was still a missing piece of the puzzle. And Dr. Levin took his background in both biology and computer science and started thinking, well, the genes seem to code for the bits and pieces of the body, the various proteins and enzymes, but the genome doesn't seem to explain how all of these things function harmoniously to create the body working in a very seamless way. Just because what enzymes and what proteins are there, and you've mapped out what the biological pathways are, it's really hard to understand how everything works together in such an amazing and intricate fashion. So, following on the work of Dr. Becker and also researchers from earlier in the 20th century, Dr. Levin started doing research where he was manipulating bioelectrical patterns in the body. He refers to them as the bioelectric blueprints of the body. And in manipulating these bioelectrical blueprints, he was able to demonstrate some really amazing things. For example, he was doing studies on mice where you take these mice that have a gene where the mice will always get cancer because of this oncogene that they have. And he was able to show that by modulating bioelectric patterns in the cells, he was able to prevent the cancer from developing, even though this death sentence of an oncogene was there. Another exciting area was he was very interested in limb regeneration. This was also an area of focus of Dr. Robert Becker back in the day. He's famous for his experiments with salamander limb regeneration, where he demonstrated that there was aspects of bioelectricity that were a major factor in the limb regeneration. Well, Dr. Levin hypothesized that maybe you could leverage that thing that happens in salamanders. Salamanders regenerate. I think most people are aware of that. If you cut off a limb, it'll grow back. But once you get up the chain of evolution, that functionality is lost. Well, Dr. Levin wondered if it would be possible to get what happens in the salamander, which is bioelectrically mediated, to happen in higher animals. And he's shown that it actually can. In fact, recently, they've regenerated the amputated leg of a frog, which does not normally regenerate. So when I realized that Dr. Levin was, and he specifically refers to these as, the bioelectric blueprints, and that they are these global blueprints that guide the formation of the body from the fertilized egg and guide it to form all of the tissues that develop from that fertilized egg. I thought, well, that's really conceptually similar to the concept of qi in Chinese medicine, because qi is generally thought to be this very mysterious thing and often dismissed by Western scientists as having no grounding in Western science. But qi in Chinese medicine is responsible for everything that goes on in the body. And for years, Western scientists who would look at acupuncture, they would measure things like endorphins or neuropeptides, see molecular changes that were taking place, map brain imaging to show changes taking place in the brain. But in all of those cases, you have to kind of set aside the classical Chinese understanding of how the body works and say, well, the Chinese discovered something cool, but it doesn't work for the reason that they thought it did. When I start seeing research like Dr. Levin's, all of a sudden it seems like maybe there is something to the classical Chinese understanding. And I'm not saying that qi is bioelectricity, but I'm saying that there clearly is an energetic, a holistic energetic layer to the body that is upstream from matter. And that got me thinking, well, wouldn't it be really cool to bring together people from the biofield research community and also people from the classical Chinese medicine community so they could cross-fertilize each other with their ideas. The biofield people could share the amazing research that they're doing, and the people from the classical Chinese medicine community could share what they've discovered in the classical Chinese medicine texts that maybe could provide insight into some of this research that's been done in recent years and ideally provide inspiration for future directions.
And I'm going to kind of repeat what you just said, because that was kind of the idea of of putting together a collection of presenters from the biofield sciences, from consciousness, and from classical Chinese medicine. Because when we kind of started talking, I had this dream of putting together an event which focuses on the role of which focuses on the role of consciousness, mind, and healing. And you had this idea about the biofield sciences, and we thought the two part process is the biofield science research actually will give validation to what we observe and witness in our clinics. And also, it shares with us that the classical texts are not just stories. There's actually science that is validating, confirming what they wrote in the classical text. So that was part of the excitement of let's bring these two groups together. As you said, let's cross pollinate. And then on the other side, they're doing this research. The biofield experts are doing this research almost in the dark. And the classical text can give them so much direction to research, as in validate this, because they've already said this is how the world works. Can you validate it? And so we thought, looking at the world, and most of you are aware that we see a lot of suffering, a lot of mob hate and fear, and to heal the planet, we think classical Chinese medicine has a role in it. And this new science of biofield science and consciousness, letting each other know that we're more together than separate, may be the way to heal. And so we can enjoy our peace and freedom. That's kind of my lofty spiritual side of it. And so I kind of love to have you tell us a little bit about this collection of speakers and talks that we have labeled the Healthy Horizon Symposium, that's available online at Healthy Seminars.
Well, we're putting together a collection of speakers with a goal that to weave together insights from clinical practice, research, scholarship, and personal experience. Before I go on, I should say that I want to include a piece that we haven't discussed quite yet. I've been talking about biofield science research, and I've been talking about classical Chinese medical literature that seems to provide a lot of clues to what's going on in the biofield research. But I don't want to leave out all of the practitioners who have been bringing these ideas from either one or the other into their clinics for decades now, because a big emphasis in our talks is going to be on the practical level. So, even if some of us like to geek out, as you said, on these subjects, which I clearly do, uh, we also, most importantly, we want to take this information and use it to really ramp up the ability to heal people, heal society, heal the environment. Because this concept of the biofield, it's there, a lot of the research has focused on what's going on in the human body, but this concept of the biofield actually extends beyond the human body into the relationships that we have with other people, and also the environment, the natural world around us being an aspect of the biofield. And all of it is also connected to consciousness, because consciousness is also an aspect of the biofield. So, so we're weaving together people who come from clinical practice, research, scholarship, and personal experience. And our goal is to begin to tell a new story. The old story is one of materialism and reductionism and scarcity. And the new story we want to tell is one of holism, complexity, and abundance. There's a new paradigm coming, and this new paradigm can help, as you alluded to, Lorne, bring us all together and begin to heal the rifts within our own body and also within society and between humans and nature. Our speakers are going to be coming from the biofield research world. We're going to hear about some really amazing research that I think is going to be really inspiring to people. And we're also going to hear from scholars who've spent years digging around in classical texts and seem to be coming to the same place from a different angle. But perhaps most importantly, we're going to be hearing from the clinicians who are going to be showing the people who attend these presentations how they can actually really amp up their work with their patients and create really exceptional healing experiences for them.
And I guess before we close here, of this collection of talks and speakers that we have now available, can you share some of the examples of these different types of presentations and how they kind of fit into this vision?
Yeah, well, a speaker who's going to be upcoming in the near future and somebody who's been on your platform many times and will be on it many times again is a woman named Yvonne Farrell. Yvonne has been focusing on the treatment of trauma using the 8 extraordinary vessels for many years. And the 8 extraordinary channels have sometimes been referred to as the embryological blueprint of the body. And when I first was learning about Michael Levin's research, and he was talking about the bioelectric blueprint of the body and specifically talking about embryology, I thought to myself, well, that sounds really familiar. And I cracked open a few books that I had on my shelves on the 8 extraordinary vessels. One from Giovanni Massiosia, the late great master of Chinese medicine, and another man named Hamid Montakab. And sure enough, they were also both referring to the 8 extraordinary vessels as the embryological blueprint of the body. And that was actually one of the things that got me thinking, the Chinese medicine has actually been using similar terms. And I know Michael Levin wasn't studying Chinese medicine or the 8 extraordinary vessels. He came up with this term himself, and yet people in the Chinese medicine world have been using the same term. And that's what really got me thinking. There's something in classical Chinese medicine that's going to really help understand all of these things. So the 8 extraordinary vessels, as all the acupuncturists in the audience know, are the carriers of essence or jing in the body. And the jing is inherited from your parents, some from your mother and some from your father. In the past, it's often been said that the essence was very similar to the concept of genes in Western medicine. But I think now, as we've moved, past a more simplistic understanding of genes into the world of epigenetics and now the biofield, and because Chinese medicine comes from a less material perspective, I've been beginning to think that it's more appropriate to think of the essence as maybe the carrier of not just the genes, but also the epigenome and the bioelectric code. Bioelectric code is another term that's been used by Michael Levin. According to Yvonne, when you experience any type of trauma in the body, the 8 extraordinary vessels are a primary part of the body that's affected. And that's whether that trauma happens, personally in this life, or is societal trauma from, systemic racism, war, which is something that is really on everybody's minds recently, and also intergenerational trauma. I think a lot of people are aware of research that's been done showing some really unfortunate effects that happen when people go through the trauma of war, and the marks that are put on your biofield or epigenome actually pass through and affect the future generations. So Yvonne has discovered that focusing on the 8 extraordinary vessels is actually a way to alter and restore this blueprint of the body to where it would be prior to having experienced all of this trauma. And again, like I said, there's so much synchronicity, and conceptually at least, between the way I hear these classical practitioners speaking and what I'm also finding in the biofield research area. And I thought was particularly interesting when I had a recent conversation with Yvonne about this is, like I said, Dr. Levin is not familiar with what people are doing in Chinese medicine. And Yvonne wasn't really familiar with what was going on in the biofield research either. And yet they had landed in a similar place using similar terminology, which I thought was very striking. Um, that's one example. Um, from the biofield perspective, there's what are called biofield therapies, and biofield therapies fit into two general categories. They can be manual therapies where people are, using their hands, either actually touching the body to um, modulate the energy of the body, or even hands-off therapies. And they can also be technology-mediated therapies. Um, we have one speaker at the conference, Prana Gojia, who's an Ayurvedic practitioner who's also a licensed acupuncturist with a background in electronic engineering. And Prana has developed some exciting new technology that uses very precisely designed combinations of frequencies that are based upon his deep understanding of both Chinese medicine and ancient Ayurvedic texts to generate various types of sound, various types of frequencies that can be output in various forms. If you connect his system to a set of headphones, you can take in the frequencies in the form of sound. But if you connect his device to a pulsed electromagnetic field generator, you can take in the frequencies in the form of pulsed electromagnetic fields. And his whole model is based upon an understanding of Chinese medical patterns, and from his Ayurvedic background, chakras and the various systems of channels in Ayurvedic medicine. So very fascinating stuff that's going on right now.
And what we've done Todd just gave two examples. So to build the bridges between classical Chinese medicine, biofield science, and consciousness, and to help with this paradigm shift, healing on an individual level, on a global level, on an environmental planetary level, we've brought together 27 inspirational presenters at the top of their game to bring this information to us, because that's the idea. We need to understand and how to bring this into our lives and into our practice. And so this information is all available. If you go to the Healthy Seminars, you should be able to find it there. Just ask us about this, what we're calling the Health Horizon Symposium, and we'll be able to direct you where you can find a collection of these talks from these 27 presenters. Todd, I'm glad that we connected and that we had that opportunity to chat and geek out. You shared this idea about the biofield sciences and other materials, and I was sharing how I was in this frame of mind, getting into personal development and spiritual evolution for our profession and our society. And then we just kind of merged the ideas, and it grew and expanded. And all I got to share with everybody that we connected with, the presenters, are very well known and busy. And they all pretty much said that they were going to say no because they're too busy to prepare this material for us to make available to you. And when we shared our vision, all but I think one, based on their schedule, put other things aside and came together to create this content for our community, which we're grateful for. And Todd, I'm grateful for you for really being the co-chair of this material. I call it the event, the material, because you really storyboarded and really worked with the presenters to tell this story, so it has meaning for the acupuncture community. So thank you for that as well.
You're welcome, Lorne. I'm excited to be part of this project. I just wanted to add one more thing before we go that I feel that I glossed over. We have a lot of practical presentations that we have planned in the year ahead. But rather than focusing on protocols for disease treatment, I mentioned one where we were talking about trauma. There's really going to be a strong psycho-spiritual emphasis in the presentations that we're planning, with the idea that the ultimate root of ill health, according to Chinese medicine, the internal cause of disease is the mind and the emotions. And so we're really having a big focus on healing the mind, working with the emotions, and helping people in their psychological and spiritual development in the practical presentations.
Perfect. Again, thank you, Todd. And again, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode here. We much appreciate it.